part of the mission that Leo's on is to see the reactions and to train chimpanzees to fly space module. They're called pods. And in order to do this, there have been experimentations taking place in which human genes have been spliced to some of these chimpanzees, a handful of these chimpanzees, to help them develop the intellect, to be able to do more complicated maneuvers and more original thinking, more human-like thinking than the kind of chimpanzees that are here today, which are, after all, our closest relative, have the closest DNA to us. It doesn't take a huge adjustment to get them almost human.
It's just rock candy.
Consider an actual boyfriend.
You mean do I enjoy being miserable? No thanks, I think I'll stick with Chance.
Another curveball. Gotta pay attention.
You weren't authorized to change his flight behavior.
Teaching.
No, you're teasing him.
Wait, is gene splice chromosome enhanced? The state-of-the-art monkey?
You know what, you frustrate them and they lose focus, they get confused even violent. Hey, congratulations, Pericles, you're gonna be a daddy.
Hi. Not smart on his face.
Leave it, Joe.
Actually, the female was the aggressive.
Aggressive works.
Leave it, Joe. Leo.
In one of the island model shops, we're going to go inside and take a look at some of the stuff from Planet of the Apes. Okay, this is the Oberon space station, and the complete model is about 13.5 feet tall from top to bottom. Here we've got the bottom off. This is how we shot it for some of the shots, just so we could get the camera closer to it and it didn't have to be so far up in the air. It's rigged with 2 motion control mounts. It's got internal lighting. It's got fluorescent and incandescent lights. And this model held up for some fairly close shots. We had some close shots that were very close to this hand, as the pod flew up beneath this, so we got very tight on this. We also built a miniature that's a close-up section of this, because when the pod leaves, he comes out from these little doorways that are inside the arm. This is the one area that we did in close-up, and this has got its backlit in here, and they did some beauty lighting from the back, and you see Mark Wahlberg's pod come out like this as it takes off.
Movies, science fiction is sort of a jump from reality per se, so we're not always doing what's real in space or what we know the scientists tell us to be real. We're evolving and developing a shot to what looks right, and for what is in the movie, the electromagnetic storm. Basically, the premise behind that storm is that it's disturbing the sound waves and all the communication on Earth. So that is kind of the backbone of the tsunamis that Tim has coined that come flashing and crashing out of the electromagnetic storm. What I'm showing here is just some simple wireframe representations of the early testing that we did with the spheres and trying to figure out how they would move in relationship to each other. He kept talking about this idea of sonic booms. He liked that, and he kept throwing this emotional sound with it. So we tried to envision what would this sort of space electrical energy be if we had this sonic boom with it. So we ended up working and developed this whole idea of patterns of rings that were sort of roiling and developing over each other. Okay, so the first pass you're seeing here is what I would call the center core, or the most gaseous part of it, an element here. And unlike the spheres, this is rendered very soft and glowy with a lot of high energy. This next element is our most gaseous element, which is sort of blurred and softened and then put over the top of the tsunami. This is what we call the core element, which have the most structure. And finally, I wanted to show the background plate that we composite the tsunami behind for the shot. Is sometimes when you get space movies, you've got spaceships and you know what they are, and they're shooting lasers and they're just flying through space. This tsunami, Tim didn't have an image that he wanted. It was more, let's come up and show him things. So it gave us an opportunity, gave me a good opportunity to sort of go in there and sort of bring my own aesthetic to the project, and I thought that was very exciting.
So, B34B, we're going to be looking up into our ceiling.
Well, we might be farther than we can see underground.
Why wouldn't you even want to be all the way back here?
Because you're looking up at it coming down. You're up at a 60-degree angle.
piggies on the backside gathering up trees. What do you need? If you ever have to build a miniature bog, you can use shiitake mushrooms, and you can use self-clumping kitty litter in a pond. It really works well. Looks like bacteria. And it smells good, too. Is that bounce free? Yes. You want this in here? Yeah. If you could just hold it. Now, where did we decide the hit point was? We have. We moved up to us. That's up to us. The thing that would be my worst nightmare is if it hits like this and just goes. Oh, it'll shape like this should actually hit and fall on the side. So all we're talking about really though is the hit position. Is it here or is it back there? Yeah. So we just push it back a little bit further, and if we take the wings off, we can get the camera in any closer. So it's more of a tilt and less of a pan. Well, here, Marty, I'm willing to look at just a lock off of it coming in. The point I want to get across in this shot is that it's descending. Right. The thing is coming down. Right. And that may come across in a locked off shot, and then we can add a little bit of post move to it later. So Jack, just slowly, push it in. So see, look at that. Oh, we're going down. No question about it. See, that's it right there. Try that again. It's not much of a tilt, but it's telling the story. Alright, standing by, please.
Someone record on and forward.
Is there anybody underneath the deck? Alright, everybody's clear. Roll video, please. Ready, and action. Still way down there. And cut. Back to one. Yeah, maybe a little bit before the old one, and it's bouncing like crazy. Yeah. So we try to just go back to our header. You want to just do the original move and see what that does? Yeah. This is the last one. Hey, Robbie. Sure. Let's just reset it to yesterday's move.
My name is Grady Kofer, and I'm a digital compositor here at Industrial Light and Magic. So if you follow me, we'll go to the bay. We'll be entering the Saber department. I'm telegraphed by the dragon head down the hallway. So this way. This is the actual live action play. So this is the original play. And the map painting then was delivered here, and we combined the two. This is the new map painting of the sky. And then it's kind of made this as a little kind of fractal fire flame. And we added little flickery fires, and of course a little bit of haze of dust in the foreground to kind of sell it. Here's your shot.
This one over here, this is Ape City. And this was the model that we used for the medium to long shots where you saw the whole city in the distance. So it's built big enough so the detail will hold up for that kind of thing. But then for close-up work, we needed some shots where we're actually in the city looking out. And we had a full-size set in Los Angeles at Sony. But for our shots, we built these larger scale models and built them in force perspective so that we could kind of compress the set and get the whole city in the shot.
In Ape City, when we were shooting there, we had apes dressed as kind of servant apes and apes dressed as, citizens, with a variety of things from, a featured barber and a musician and organ grinder and his human monkey and all those elements to give it a little, reality with I think with an audience and a little of Tim's special humor.
I love it. It's very, my house is across the way, and it's a huge set. It's quite bizarre. It's kind of been like in Las Vegas here, I feel, because you have no sense of time or day, and it's a complete fantasy.
Action! And background!
Who told you you could throw stones if you want? My father. What's right wrong?
Action! And background!
I wanted to be able to use this incredible technology that Rick Baker has come up with. There's so much movement available to the actor with this particular design that you wanted to take advantage of it as much as you could.
I was talking to Helena the other day, and she said it's a great compliment that, we've been hired to get behind these makeups in order to play our characters, because I suppose some people could think they could put anybody behind the masks and just shoot it, but that's not the way that Tim and Richard Zanuck and Ralph have gone about it. They wanted real people, so it's a kind of compliment that even though we're behind it all, we've been asked to do it.
We had to have the dentures, which were very difficult, and then on top of the dentures, the way the makeup was, it's very difficult to articulate through that. So basically the idea was to get the performance and have the delivery in there, even if it didn't come out as clear as it would have to be in the final product, but to find the performance and worry mostly about that and to create the expressions as honestly without mugging too much. And because we'll probably do some looping, I'm sure we will.
Is with all of us sitting around talking to each other with these teeth in, you can't really speak properly. We have to do the voices a little bit later, and so it's very hard not to break up and crack up when people go and being serious and being loving or being angry, and all you hear is people going. Think about that kind of most primitive, most powerful reaction you can have to a situation and write it from there, and then sometimes put the governor on and bring it back a little bit more toward human. My partner Mark Rosenthal has a whole history with apes. He spent time in Borneo with orangutans and in Africa with gorillas, and so he of the team, he was the one who was most focused on trying to get at the apes, trying to write it in a way that asked the question in each moment, what would an ape do here? And then, of course, Tim Burton is looking at the balance between ape behavior and human behavior. What is it? Where do these creatures fall in that thing? They're not quite human, and they're not quite ape. And is one going too far in one direction or another? And Tim constantly kind of trying, and he's done a fantastic job of walking that line and being very clear about where he wants to be with those apes, and making sure that they don't go. They're never too human, and they're never too ape-like. They are this interesting marriage of the two.
To kind of, in a sense, have those dogs, the paintings of the dogs that playing poker. He wanted that kind of eerie, kind of ape dinner party, where it was real but unreal. And I think he got what he wanted. I hope he did. We're talking about the human problem, and it's more or less a slice of ape life, slice of the elite ape society, and sort of sets up, the dynamic of the relationship between humans and apes in this world. Tim is such an amazing guy to watch too, because he works so much on the set. So many things happen there. I mean, he's obviously does his homework, but he also keeps an atmosphere of creativity and freedom and ease for his actors, and he's wonderful at conducting it all that energy, whether it's the technical, the artistic, the whole thing. You don't feel like you're under the gun on a high-pressured, big-budget movie. You feel like you have time. You feel like you have time. You don't have time. He wanted, I hope he did. We're talking about the human problem, and it's more or less a slice of ape life, slice of the elite ape society, and sort of sets up, the dynamic of the relationship between humans and apes.
And party scene. At a later point in the scene, Mark was supposed to appear. And the minute he walked on the set, of that set, I was thinking to myself, I said, my God, he's in for trouble. Just the way he was carrying himself, And it was just these slight little things that I realized that we kind of got something going here, because he didn't have to do anything, didn't have to say anything, and I knew right away he was going to get his ass kicked, It was really pretty interesting. Just the way he walked around the table, carried the tray. He was doing everything that he was supposed to do, but just not with the right attitude, It's pretty remarkable. Starts to break out, at which point Bon and myself, who are the house humans, tell him that there's a curfew and they'll kill you if they see you out on the street at night. And he sort of tosses this line out to me about, if you stay here, you're dead anyway. It's kind of one of those lines that has a lot of resonance for my character through this whole journey, because he starts out as a really submissive and kind of a nothing, but at some point, once he makes that decision to go along, and I think it's really this difference in Leo's persona that attracts him, and he sees a Christ-like figure, and goes with it. He's one of the apostles in that sense.
Everybody else. He's got on boots in some kind of burnt-up suit way. He just doesn't look like us. He's come from somewhere else. So, here goes imagination. Here's a little bit of imagination. So you're thinking, okay, is this guy a spy? The apes planted here, to basically set our plans awry. So there's distrust at first, but when he has to escape Ape City, and Leo is there helping him to escape, he still doesn't fully trust him, but he really doesn't have any other choice. Either he stays and gets killed, or he just goes with this guy. And along the way, he really observes him and sees that he's different than most other humans, and he's hoping that where we're going to meet up with his comrades, there'll be more people like him, of course.
That is Charlton Heston's house, or it's Thade's father's house. We call it Chuck's house. When we were shooting this model, we took it outdoors because it was more expedient to go out and shoot with real trees in the background. So we found a location near Island where we could go outside, we could set it up, and in the far background we had huge real trees. In the mid-ground we had trees that were left over from our Jungle Crash set. And then in the foreground we had the smaller trees that are here on the model. And then they'll probably go in later and post and add some real trees also that they can comp in around the building to give it scale for that shot.
Thade's father. And he is the wise ape in this piece. He's the repository of the ape knowledge, of the ape lore, the ape folk material. He's the one who knows the history in a way that others don't. And some of that history is stuff that apes of today don't want to hear. He knows some things they don't want to hear. And he's going to kind of tell it to them and make them confront him. Especially his son. He maybe for the first time in his life, he's going to talk to his son Thade, and he's going to tell him things that maybe Thade doesn't want to hear, and he's going to think, you know, well, should I have told him this sooner? You know, these are important things that I know, because you know about the history of the beginning of this planet and how we got here.
We're doing a scene where we find an ape effigy, and the humans are forbidden to cross this line of ape effigies, and they've been told that crossing that means it means certain death, and so that was a really important scene because we crossed that line through the line of effigies, and all of our characters know that nothing will ever be the same again once we've crossed that line, and that was a really fun scene to do.
There's kind of sexual tension. I mean, it's definitely a kind of love story between them. You know, I guess I'm the love interest too. The girlfriend, but I'm a chimp. It's kind of, we haven't really sort of defined it, and I think it is sort of defies normal categories, as it would, because not many people do have relationships with chimpanzees. So, but there's a connection. I think they both look at each other and they see that they're equivalent from different planets. You know, they're both youthful. They're both, you know, sort of have the arrogance of youth, and they're both rebels, and they're both people who feel that they have a certain cockiness, but they have a compassion. And Mark's so sweet with me, actually, Warburg, anyway, because he's, you know, it could be kind of disturbing and somewhat undermining as a woman to be dressed in, you know, chimp makeup, but he's, you know, he's always smiling at me and makes me feel very attractive, which is really nice.
One of the most dangerous stunts we did was one of the first week or so of shooting. The whole group of our heroes, partly with the real ones and partly with stunt doubles, but with horses, we swam them all across a part of Lake Powell, which was at the time was not much above freezing point. So we had to actually try and heat some of Lake Powell and put people in them, and the human characters really don't wear very much, so it was very difficult to do, very tough on the horses, very dangerous, because on one extreme the humans that aren't wearing much are freezing to death, and on the other extreme the doubles were like Carrie with the ape costume on, would take on all the water, so they end up weighing about 500 pounds, which is dangerously obviously in water.
For how cold it was, because we had to do this one shot where I was riding on the horses coming out of the water, and we were, the horses were neck deep in the water, and Tim wanted a shot of one of the actors coming along on the horses, and this was a stunt. This was something that the stunt doubles were doing, and I'd grown up with riding horses, so Tim said, listen, can any of the actors do this? And the guy was saying, no, you know, these are the horses they were training on, this is strictly stunt doubles. And then he goes, well, maybe she can. So I'm there on this horse, the horse is neck deep in this freezing cold water, my legs are in the water, which is just, you know, I'm just sitting there going, oh, but the adrenaline's rushing.
Pretty cold, but it's an amazing place. You really feel like you're on another planet when you're out there. It's weird because I've gotten beaten up more in this movie than I have every other movie that I've been in. Every movie I get beat up. That's the reason why I get cast, because I take a good beating. But this is the first time that I actually look forward to getting to the set, which is weird, you know. I mean, I always enjoy making movies, but you know, it's also tough to make them, and Tim's made it very easy on everybody.
In the movie where Tim Roth, who plays Thade, hears some bad news from one of his lieutenants, and as originally, so it sort of started at the level of he hears the bad news, he gets upset, and then there was this idea that Tim had to have at least one place in the movie where an ape would go, what he always called ape shit. You know, we had to have the ape shit moment in this movie, and so he decided that's where that place was going to be. So the first rewrite of that was Tim Roth gets furious and kind of storms around and slaps soldiers and gets more and more angry and aggravated. And the second version of that, Tim Roth climbs walls. And the third version of that came to Tim on the set one day, in which he realized that there was this flaming chandelier above the archway near where he's having this conversation with the lieutenant where he hears the bad news. So it seemed just, you know, like the simplest thing to Tim, and you know, to him the most obvious thing, and to the rest of us a startling thing. So, you know, it's kind of a process. It goes from original conception to kind of finally what you know, a Tim Burton moment.
I did two commercials together in Prague, which were in some ways very different from this, but had some similarities. And so when he approached me about coming on board, it was to really do something with apes that you could never have done at the time that the original was shot, which was to add some of the sort of ferocious speed and power that a real primate has. So we've done a lot of that with wire-assisted gags, accelerators, and the other thing that was never done in the original was the fact that we now have apes going on quadruped on all fours. So we, in our world, we're saying that the apes are on two legs for most of their time, but when they get either panicky, scared, or aggressive, or whatever, they revert back to their quadruped basis. Once you've set up that they're very powerful, they're very fast, it's really scary when there's lots of them screaming across the desert, and you know, they can tear you apart. And we see them in front of your eyes. You see them overtaking galloping horses and things. In the world, we're saying that the apes are on two legs for most of their time, but when they get either panicky, scared, or aggressive, or whatever, they revert back to their quadruped basis. Once you've set up that they're very powerful, they're very fast, it's really scary when there's lots of them.
Takes place in an epic battle sequence in the desert. And to start with, we had the original backplate. And here are apes responding to kind of a dummy explosion in the rocket booster of this ship. So one of the first things we did, we replaced the sky. So here's the original sky. You can see we added a kind of a more dramatic sky, kind of darker and gloomier, and also map painters kind of put in a new horizon of the desert up there, some new mountains. And as you can see, we also increased the number of apes. We've composited in a multitude of apes. We've been populating shots with apes. Then here's an explosion element that they shot up here. So that was then composited into this rocket booster. And a large part of the task of this shot was choreographing the kind of trajectories of these flying apes. So we had this stunt of an ape right on fire, some great performance, a lot of kind of spinning and rotating and clawing. So we took that element and started replicating. There's some motion paths, so we started kind of animating their trajectories. We gave them a little bit of rotation. And as we give them some depth here, so I'm kind of rotating around them in 3 dimensions. So to seal the deal, we added huge kind of glowing flare to kind of flash out and fog out the frame. Nice camera shape to enhance the shock wave. And the end result is this. Total ape carnage.
Done in clay, and then the clay was, we did a variety of different molds, or rubber molds and plaster molds for various things. And then this was cast in fiberglass, and the chair was actually built out of wood, and then our finishers came in and gave it a foam marble paint job. This is one of 2 variations that we did, and the first one was one that was based on a sculpt that we got that came up from LA. And it was slightly different from the actual Lincoln Memorial. There were subtle differences to it in terms of the posture and the size of the chair and that sort of thing. And Tim Burton and Rick Heinrichs came and looked at that. They weren't quite happy with it, and they wanted to make some adjustments, and we leaned more towards the actual Lincoln sculpture, with the exception of the head, the hands, and the feet. One of the things we did here with the hands and with the head, we were trying to preserve the image that this was Lincoln, because the first shot you see this in, it's from over the shoulder like this. You see Mark Wahlberg walking towards it, and we're looking here, and as far as everyone knows, this is the Lincoln Memorial. So the hand, we look very smooth on the top, so that it preserves the illusion that it's a human hand. But from the front side, you can look at all the texturing and stuff. I mean, you're definitely not looking at human hands, human feet, that sort of thing. That's why we were working on this. I had gone to DC, and while I was there with the Lincoln Memorial, I started taking pictures, and in the midst of being there, I got a phone call. You know, this was when they wanted to make the changes and make it look like the original Lincoln statue. So I happened to be there. I had a video camera, a still camera, and a color swatch book, and my cell phone, and I was calling back to Island, talking to the sculptors and saying, what do you want to see? And specifically shooting. While I'm on the phone, you want to see the chin, zooming in on the chin, and taking the color swatch book back to the wall, and you know, here it is. It's a 302 view, whatever it is. Just giving the exact information. And I shot all these stills and things, and lo and behold, we came back. We used all of it. So it was very fortuitous. They just happened to be in Washington at that point.
It was a set piece with Mark Wahlberg's character. So he's supposed to be standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So here's a still, digital map painting, extending it out. But the challenge on this shot, of course, is all of the interactive light, because you have all of these sirens flashing different lights on columns and on the steps. So what we had to do was connect areas and track colors in all of these different areas in the actual kind of live action plate, which is here, and have the map painting reflect all of that same kind of color interplay. So I'm actually constantly color correcting it to match certain areas to other areas. And then, of course, all of the foreground characters have to be rotoed back onto this scene. And then, of course, if you're interested, this is the last shot of the movie. So here's the reverse of that same shot. The supervisor, Bill George, anytime he looked at this shot, would say, "You are so busted." So this is the "You are so busted" shot. So you have these are 3D computer-generated helicopters with 3D search beams, and some great kind of practical running crowds that will be composited into the pools of light. I'll show you some of these elements. There's an interesting kind of siren element, but we did with that, we kind of took those little siren pieces and animated a whole bunch of just siren lights in the background, so you get a sense of kind of this onslaught of police cars, and composited in tons of people to kind of fill in the gaps. Tim definitely wanted to fill all the holes, so there are tons of masses of crowds.